Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So continuing on with Buddhadhamma, and we're on page 872, section 4 of the Happiness, chapter 11. And this one is this section, advantages and disadvantages of happiness. As mentioned earlier, the Buddha examined the advantages and disadvantages of all things. In the case that something still possesses both advantages and disadvantages, he would then describe how one may pass beyond them. That is, he would explain how further development is possible. Looking at things in this way enables a continual development. When one reaches a particular point, one acknowledges both its advantages, asara, and disadvantages, adinawa. One then looks forward the way out, nisarana, leading to the next stage, and one develops the necessary conditions to move on. In whatever work or activity one is engaged, the examination of these three factors lead to ongoing development. One does not get lost in thinking that one has reached completion. One does not stop making effort and become passive, negligent, and heedless, which results in missed opportunities. Let us now look at the advantages and disadvantages of happiness. Rather than going into a detailed analysis of the many different kinds and stages of happiness, here the discussion will focus on some primary features of happiness that are related to other spiritual qualities and that pertain to people's everyday life. One such spiritual quality, which is relevant to everyone and is connected to meditation, to spiritual practice, and to every aspect of learning, is concentration, samadhi. Happiness is expressly valuable to concentration. The Pali Canon states, happiness is a basis and criterion for concentration. It is a proximate cause for concentration. The literal meaning of sukha, happiness, is convenient or easy. One is free from pressure, obstruction, affliction, struggle, agitation, and anxiety. In other words, one is peaceful. Happiness leads to peace. When the mind is peaceful, concentration arises easily. A happy and tranquil mind is prepared for concentration. Happiness is a characteristic of a high quality of life. Arhants, for example, when they are not engaged in a specific activity, dwell in the state of mind referred to as abiding at ease in the present, Dita Dhamma Sukha Vihara, which is most often a state of jhana. There are many disadvantages of happiness. In particular, happiness may lead to carelessness, infatuation, obsession, indulgence, procrastination, indifference, or laziness. Concentration, which is based on happiness, has similar disadvantages. In Pali, concentration is sometimes referred to as belonging to the same faction as laziness, kosajja pakka. At the same time, however, concentration belongs to the 37 factors of enlightenment, bodhipakkhya dhamma. Concentration is directly associated with awakening. It lies alongside awakening. Awakening is dependent on concentration. Here, simply note that concentration is a factor of enlightenment, but that it is also associated with laziness. When one examines spiritual qualities, do not only look at their advantages, also acknowledge their disadvantages. Be careful. If one develops concentration incorrectly, one will give rise to laziness. The Buddha, in this case, encouraged the application of mindfulness for inspection and caution. When one attains concentration, one asks, has this concentration deviated towards idleness and inertia? Has it become an impediment? The heedless indulgence in the pleasure of concentration is harmful. One must be careful and know how to apply concentration. Do not fall into heedlessness. When people experience happiness, especially sense pleasure, it is very likely that they will become carried away, infatuated, and enchanted by it, resulting in heedlessness. When experiencing happiness, they lose a sense of urgency and do not wish to do anything else. Although there remains things to be done, they become negligent, indifferent, and indolent, resulting in a weak character. For this reason, those people who have experienced happiness and yet remain unmindful, who are indulgent, apathetic, and heedless, become weak and corrupted. They may even meet with calamity and ruin. Many individuals, communities, nations, and even civilizations throughout history have fallen into this cycle of decline. When looking at these disadvantages, it may appear that happiness is of a very low value. But happiness is simply happiness. It is the corrupted and defiled human beings themselves who deal with happiness incorrectly and thus end up experiencing harmful effects. Here, we must return to the subject of sense pleasure, which has a bearing on almost everyone's life. Although we have discussed sense pleasure already, here we will focus on it directly in relation to spiritual practice. The dangers or disadvantages of sense pleasure, of happiness dependent on material things and serving personal gratification, are extensive, and people thus require the supervision or protection by way of the 5 precepts. This points to a basic drawback or weakness of sense pleasure. It is a cause for competition and exploitation among human beings. The things providing gratification are external, and they are insufficient in number to fulfill the desires of everyone. Because each person desires things for himself and wishes to obtain the maximum amount of these things, they see each other as adversaries. People thus conflict and compete with one another. This is followed by deception, dishonesty, and deceit, a search for followers and a pursuit of power, and various forms of persecution and abuse. The pursuit of sense pleasure is the source of conflict and oppression between people and between nations. It is the source of war, leading to all kinds of suffering and affliction. People then search without end for a solution. Their voices call for peace, but their hands brandish swords. This is the first danger of sense pleasure. Social oppression, which spreads suffering outwards, has its root in the mind, i.e., an insatiable desire, which is a common characteristic of craving, tanha. Moreover, this insatiability, which conforms to a voracious hunger for things and an inability to feel one has enough, creates suffering within an individual. The more people get, the more they want. A specific degree or amount of things that once provided happiness is eventually no longer satisfactory. The feeling of joy and excitement is replaced by indifference, apathy, and a sense of ennui. Once boredom sets in, those things that at one time seemed indispensable now must simply be endured. Those things that once provided happiness are now a cause for suffering. The nature of desire has changed. Now one may wish for the object to go away, to disappear. This is one form of affliction. At one time, one may have been penniless. If one obtains $30, one is over the moon, and when one earns a wage of $30 a day, one is exceedingly happy. Eventually, one wishes to earn $3,000 a day. One imagines that with such a wage, all of one's desires will be fulfilled and one will experience delight. Indeed, if it happens that one earns such a wage, at first one is blissful and content. Closer look at this dynamic reveals the gradual expansion of craving in 2 ways. First, when one obtains a regular wage of $3,000 per day, if one day only one obtains $30, an amount that had at one time provided a great sense of joy, one is unhappy. The same thing that once provided happiness now causes suffering. Second, although one may have been convinced that by earning a wage of $3,000 per day, one wouldn't wish for anything more, eventually one feels apathy and boredom. One then thinks that one needs to earn a wage of $30,000 per day in order to feel satisfied. This target will increase without end. The Buddha stated that even if one were to turn a mountain into gold, it would still not gratify the desire of one individual, because this desire is insatiable, as mentioned above. The Buddha emphasized this subject repeatedly so that his disciples would recognize that human desire is limitless, craving is endless. This desire creates oppression and affliction in society, and it also creates layers of suffering within an individual. One aspect to this suffering is the feeling of boredom and apathy. So then that ends that section, and we'll in a moment go over to a new section on nature providing happiness. But I thought it might be just one opportunity to mention just one of the comments that he made. Reminded me of a story that I've heard, but I don't know. Lung Paul might be able to provide the details of it better, but of this when somebody is very adept in concentration and kind of defaults into that as the pleasurable experience. And I was remembering a story, I think, of Ajahn and some disciple who was able to access concentration very easily, and Ajahn provided him with a challenge when he was in his presence, with constantly trying to keep him from dropping into absorption.
Yeah. I mean, it is that monk said as soon as because he had him as his attendant, and and of course as an attendant, then you spent a lot of time sitting, waiting to do something. And so he'd get bored or, fed up with listening to Ajahn Chah or listening to the lay people or whatever, and then his mind would go to concentration, to settle, and certainly to go into samadhi. And Ajahn Chah, I mean, the monk said it was always astounding to him how, as soon as he moved to concentrate, and he wasn't paying attention to what was happening, or he wasn't actually mindful, he was going to move toward jhana, then Ajahn Chah would immediately ask him to do something, get a spittoon, get a glass, and get a and. So he said he wouldn't. That was a real lesson for him.
Just wouldn't let him go there.
Wouldn't let him go there.
That was a good story. Not that most of us have that problem, but and balancing, of course, that with the fact that, as Payutto mentioned, samadhi is, certainly a part of the path that we need to develop, but I just appreciated the point of one needs to apply one's mindfulness and clear comprehension as one is doing that.
Yeah, and just that even good things have their disadvantage. And that sense of the Buddha looking at things from the perspective of benefits, drawbacks, and the way out. But then even things that are desirable and praised are something that is there's a disadvantage that is embedded in it.
Mm-hmm. As long as it's part of the conditioned world.
Yeah. I'm looking up something.
Okay, I'll hold on.
I was looking at that monk got fed up with being at Wat Pah Pong and was going to go into retreat somewhere, anywhere but Wat Pah Pong. And Ajahn Chah said, you can go back to your cave and learn to be peaceful there, or you can stay with me and learn how to be peaceful anywhere. And then he opted to stay. Yeah.
Is he still a monk?
He's still a monk. He's still a bit weird.
Okay, continue on then.
Mm-hmm.
Continue on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Section 5, Nature provides happiness. Let us examine some of the different kinds of happiness. So far, the discussion has covered the happiness derived from sense enjoyment, from contact with desirable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tangible objects. This is a matter connected with the gratification of craving, tanha, with sense pleasure, kama sukha, and with material happiness, samisa sukha. We also discussed wholesome desire, chanda, which is associated with spiritual development and leads to study, creativity, understanding, and an increase in happiness. In terms of wholesome desire, it was mentioned earlier how a person experiences happiness both while engaged in work and while engaged in learning. There are more aspects, however, to this discussion of happiness derived from wholesome desire. This increased happiness includes happiness on a social level, the joy of friendship, the joy of living with others with a heart of kindness and compassion, and the joy in families and communities of living together with mutual goodwill, care, and love, of rejoicing in harmony, and of being united in the virtues conducive to communal life. Saraniya Dhamma. And I thought that's a topic that often is discussed, the Saraniya Dhammas, and I thought I'd read, it's a brief sutta that many are familiar with, I'm sure, and from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Sixes, number 12. And this is Ajahn Jeff's translation of the Saraniya Sutta, conducive to amiability. Monks, these 6 are conditions that are conducive to amiability, that engender feelings of endearment, engender feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Which 6? There is the case where a monk is set on bodily actions of goodwill with regard to his fellows in the holy life, to their faces and behind their backs. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Furthermore, the monk is set on verbal acts of goodwill with regard to his fellows in the holy life, to their faces and behind their backs. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Furthermore, the monk is set on mental acts of goodwill with regard to his fellows in the holy life, to their faces and behind their backs. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Furthermore, whatever righteous gains the monk may obtain in a righteous way, even if only the alms in his bowl, he does not consume them alone. He consumes them after sharing them in common with his virtuous fellows in the holy life. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Furthermore, with reference to the virtues that are untorn, unbroken, unspotted, unsplattered, liberating, praised by the wise, untarnished, leading to concentration, the monk dwells with his virtue in tune with that of his fellows in the holy life, to their faces and behind their backs. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. Furthermore, with references to views that are noble, leading outward, that lead those who act in accordance with them to the right end of suffering and stress. The monk dwells with his views in tune with those of his fellows in the holy life, to their faces and behind their backs. This is a condition that is conducive to amiability, that engenders feelings of endearment, engenders feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. These are the 6 conditions that are conducive to amiability, that engender feelings of endearment, engender feelings of respect, leading to a sense of fellowship, a lack of disputes, harmony, and a state of unity. So, obviously, the Buddha places a high value on those conditions and setting up the various factors that are useful in supporting group harmony, sense of, as he says, a sense of fellowship, lack of disputes, harmony, state of unity. And that is definitely a form of happiness that is supportive for the practice. I think he'll probably go more into those things in more detail as time goes on. That was kind of where he left it with the wholesome desire for happiness within a community. There's also the happiness related to nature, the joy of living in nature, the contact with the peace and beauty of nature, including the trees, the wind, mountains, bodies of water, and the sky. The delight one experiences in flowering plants and in the sounds of the wilderness. For instance, the call of birds, the cries of wild animals, and the rumble of thundering skies. Both the happiness in relation to society and the happiness in relation to nature are emphasized and praised in Buddhism. They are sometimes combined in a single teaching of living together with kindness and in harmony, even while residing in the forest, as is documented in the Gosingasala Sutta. The Buddha went to visit 3 monks in the Gosingasala wood. He asked them, "How, Anuruddha, do you live in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes?" In that same wood, on another occasion, Venerable Sariputta asked the following question from other great disciples. "The Gosingasala tree is delightful. The night is clear and bright. The sala trees are all in blossom, giving forth fragrant scents in all directions, similar to the scents of heaven. What kind of bhikkhu, friend, could grace the Gosingasala tree wood?" There are numerous poetic verses in the Tipitaka eulogizing nature. Take, for example, the following verses from the Mahavesantara Jataka. "Near those lotus ponds, flocks of cuckoos, drunk on fruit, call out captivating, melodious cries, filling the forest with reverberating sound. When the bushes bloom in season, a sweetness like honey drips from the blossoms, resting on the lotus leaves. The breeze wafts myriad fragrances, drifting through the forest, as if inviting visitors to find delight in the perfumed flowers and branches. Swarms of bumblebees relish the scent of the blossoms, their buzzing echoing throughout." When Venerable Kaludayi invited the Buddha to travel to Kapilavatthu in order to visit his father, he spoke approximately 60 verses praising the beauty of nature found in the regions along the path to be traveled. In the end, the Buddha accepted the invitation. Here are 2 of the verses. "Fanned by breezes, the champaka trees, orchids, and laurel send out their fragrance. The crown of the trees, filled with blossoms, send down their colorful branches, as if thoroughly extending their arms and paying respects with their scent. Venerable Sir, the victorious one, now is the right time to go. Splendid parakeets and magpies, with sweet-sounding voices, fly and throng among the treetops, twittering and calling out on both sides of the path. Now is the time for the Lord to see his Father. In sum, the Buddha and the Arahants, whose hearts are purified, find delight in the peace and beauty of nature and abide happily in natural surroundings. Trainees, Seka, and unawakened persons find in nature a tranquil and refreshing environment, conducive to meditation and the development of wisdom. In reference to the development of ethics, one can see how virtue is developed along with happiness, how happiness is an important part of developing one's life, and how people are able to generate happiness within themselves. Wholesome desire is the catalyst behind this development, and education or training based on such desire automatically helps to cultivate a strong ethical foundation. Finally, there is the supreme happiness, the happiness of wisdom, which belongs to the state of independent happiness. Wisdom is a liberating factor. If one faces a stumbling block or obstruction and one doesn't know how to respond, the situation is immediately clarified and resolved with the dawn of wisdom. When faced with confusion, not knowing which way to turn and where safety lies, the heart feels oppressed and stifled. But with the arising of wise understanding, the sense of oppression and affliction disappears. When encountering a problem and no solution is apparent, one may suffer greatly, but when wisdom provides an answer, one is freed from suffering. Wisdom gradually provides freedom on many levels of one's life. When one is able to untangle the nexus of suffering, one reaches final and complete liberation, which is also perfect happiness. So there was a couple of paragraphs right there at the end that segued off into the final form of happiness. But I was appreciating the recognition of nature and the beauty of nature being a form of course, conditioned happiness, but a form that is very conducive to development of the path too. And thought to end with just one excerpt from one of the poems of the elders, the Therigatha. And this is the one from Mahakassapa, who is kind of hardcore ascetic as he is known to be, still has kind of a soft poetic edge at times, particularly in relation to natural surroundings. And this is from Ajahn Jeff's translation of the anthology from the Therigatha and Therigatha, and it's number 18, Mahakassapa, page 83. But I'll start partway through and I won't read the whole thing. Spread with garlands of vines, places delighting the mind, resounding with elephants, appealing. These rocky crags refresh me. The color of blue dark clouds, glistening, cooled with the waters of clear flowing streams, covered with ladybugs. Those rocky crags refresh me. Like the peaks of blue dark clouds, like excellent peaked roof buildings, resounding with tuskers, appealing. Those rocky crags refresh me. Their lovely surfaces wet with rain, mountains frequented by seers and echoing with peacocks. Those rocky crags refresh me. This is enough for me, desiring to do jhana, resolute, mindful. Enough for me, desiring the goal, resolute, a monk. Enough for me, desiring comfort, resolute, trained. Enough for me, desiring my duty, resolute, such. Flax flower blue, like the sky covered with clouds, filled with flocks of various birds. Those rocky crags refresh me. Uncrowded by householders, frequented by herds of deer, filled with flocks of various birds. Those rocky crags refresh me. With clear waters and massive boulders, frequented by monkeys and deer, covered with moss and water weeds. Those rocky crags refresh me. There is no such pleasure for me in the music of a 5-piece band as there is when my mind is at one, seeing the Dhamma aright. Any thoughts or comments, questions?
I mean, that's a good. It's a good anchor. Just coming back to the body. That one, because it's solid, and then the mood is kind of elevated, and so then bringing it back to the body, which also helps to settle the body and that the kind of, say, tranquility that is embodied then helps to settle the mind, and it sort of is as a longer lasting well-being.
It's like the description of piti and sukha from the commentaries. The piti being sort of that excited anticipation of something that's good, and the sukha being the
it's a bit more in throughout the whole body, and it ends up being more settled, more satisfying. Okay.